the big story. The Zondo Commission has uncovered evidence that agreements were concluded by various state-owned entities with the Guptas and their related companies. This happened alongside the South African Federation of Trade Unions opening a criminal case against Gupta-linked company Trillion Capital. That was back in 2017. The inquiry has recommended that those who ignored their legal obligation to implement anti-corruption regulations be held accountable. SAFTU's General Secretary is Zwelinzima Vavi. He's with us now to get his first take on those recommendations and the implications moving forward. Mr. Vavi, always great chatting to you, sir. Thanks for making time to speak to us. I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page here, you, me, and the viewers. Let's begin by you explaining to us again why SAFTU had taken Trillion Capital to court.
Well, firstly, let me, on behalf of SAFTU, welcome the presentation of the first phase of the state capture report to the President that have subsequently been made public. This is a very important and historic step in a battle against corruption and stealing by people that should have been or that were put in the positions of trust by our people, but who instead of persecuting a struggle to ensure that they build a better life for all, chose to rather fill their own stomachs first, whilst allowing and throwing not even bones, but literally sentencing millions and millions of workers of South Africa to a life of unemployment, poverty, and to a life of hopelessness. As we speak today, and not only because of the state capture, we acknowledge that, but some 12.5 million South Africans are unemployed. Some 77% of our young people who should have been in employment or in training and education are roaming the streets. The rates of crime, the rates of the fact that our youth are being lost to drugs is just alarming. The rates of stress and suicide in our country have reached alarming levels. And this is a direct result of what we've always said. Stealing of any kind is at the expense of ordinary people, be they workers, employed or unemployed. And it is in this context that we are calling on all workers to stand up and defend this report. And more importantly, in the context now of your question, not only to defend this report in the streets, but also to mobilize to ensure that the recommendations of the Commission are fully implemented and that no stone is left unturned in prosecuting all those that are implicated, and that we must further demand that further investigation be carried out as recommended by the Commission's report. That's the first part. The second part, we are worried that the state has been hollowed out, that there is no capacity left in the state, in any case, to fully implement all of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. Already, we're sitting with a situation where, according to the police reports, only 48% of the people who commit crimes are ever identified. And the conviction rate generally in our country is down to 15%, and conviction rate for the survivors or the victims of rape is down to 11%. And this is what should worry South Africans as we receive this report with delight as to whether there will be anything coming out of it. If you look at the reports that, as we speak, Parliament was on fire 2 days ago, we worried if there will be anybody held accountable. We don't believe for a minute that the person that has been arrested is the person behind the starting of that capture. There have been break-ins in the very nerve center of the intelligence itself, with hard cash removed in its thousands. Nobody has been held accountable. There have been break-ins even in the head of the judiciary in this country, and in the form of the Mukweng offices, where 14 computers were removed. Nobody has been held accountable. There have been break-ins in the NPA offices, in the SARS offices. The police stations have been robbed of guns. Rounds of ammunition were in their millions were disappeared in the Sea of Durban without anybody being held accountable.
Yeah.
It is that state of affairs that makes us to wonder whether the crooks in trillion that we laid charges against in 2017 will ever be held accountable.
Right. Interesting you say that, because part of what this report is recommending is the establishment of what is called an anti-corruption body, which is devoid of any kind of political oversight. I mean, help me gauge your levels of optimism around that strategy working.
Well, any institution that is created anywhere is constituted by men and women who are coming from a society. And a society that have been ravaged by the kinds of immorality exposed by this commission's report may produce exactly the kind of men and women that are themselves compromised, that are themselves the victims, themselves people who have begun to normalize this state of affairs in our country. We, however, welcome the recommendation that a separate body be put in place, hopefully the body where absolutely the only honest ones, and with a proven track record that they have resisted state capture, resisted temptations of being brought over to look on the other side when the future of our own children is being robbed by crooks who are calling themselves leadership. And they will then, these people will have to be appointed, hopefully, to guard the interest of ordinary workers. Because look, the state capture have meant that the Tinel workers will go to the festive seasons on empty stomach, unable to cater even for the most basic interest of their families. Workers in SAA have been without jobs and spent a year or more without any wages. Workers at PRASA at the security have been removed for no reason. As a result, the whole rail system have now been removed, leading to almost 80% of workers today using taxis going to and from work. The ravaging of this corruption cannot be fully accounted for, even by the Zondo Commission, because the impact have been absolutely massive and devastating.
Yeah. Part of the admissions, the startling admissions, perhaps some may say, in the report itself, is that it says that there were patterns of abuse at each stage of the procurement cycle. Goes on to say that goods and services were procured often when they were not needed, sometimes in duplication, and trillion was in some instances part of that. How do you imagine those details will feed into the criminal case that SAFTU in particular has opened against this company?
We managed to get some money back from Trillion to ESCOM. They paid back, I can't remember, some 250 million rands, if my memory serves me well. That is a very important step. It's not just about that. We're demanding that people must be imprisoned. We're also demanding that every cent that these guys stole must return back to the public purse. We are facing an austerity. We don't agree with the austerity program of budget cuts, because that's a separate battle that we're going to be fighting in 2022. But you can imagine the impact the return of every cent stolen over many years will have in terms of giving the government more possibilities to provide infrastructure in the hospitals, to employ the nurses, the doctors that are in massive shortage across all of the public hospitals today, the teachers that are running short in KZN, Eastern Cape and other provinces, employing the 60,000 police that Ketla Stoller said he has vacancies for. Imagine if we can ensure that local government operates effectively. And that's why we must mobilize ordinary people, not only to demand accountability and prosecution of all of those thugs, but also to to demand that the state develop a capacity to trace down even a single cent and return it to the public purse so that that cent can make a contribution in addressing the current levels of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities.
Zwelinzima Vavi is the General Secretary of SAFTU. Sir, thanks very much indeed once again.